Hello there, people of the internet. I'm not sure if this video is going to make the light of day, but I want to go ahead and give my 2 cents on the situation that we find ourselves here in the United States. If you're in another country around the world, you are in a completely different situation than we are in. But here in the US, there's a lot of people who decide to themselves that they don't need a means of self-defense. And so as a result, they decide that they're not going to have any sort of firearm to be able to keep themselves or their family or their loved ones safe. Now, these same people who decide that they don't need a means of self-defense will also make claims that nobody else on the civilian market ends up needing firearms for safety purposes. And they will preach until they're red in the face that civilians should not own firearms and the government needs to heavily regulate the firearms that civilians can own. Whenever people say that, I ask them one question. I just ask them, hey, do you trust the government? And more often than not, they're like, oh, God, no, I don't trust the government at all. So I ask them, you want the government, who you don't trust, to regulate the firearms that are on the civilian sector? That makes a lot of sense. But besides that, I mean, that's an argument for another time period. I just want to go ahead and talk about the issues that we're having here in the United States in terms of danger. There's a lot of people out there who believe that they don't need a means of self-defense, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are just living absolute sheltered lifestyle. They wake up, go to work, go home, watch TV, and nothing bad ever happens to them because they've just gotten so used to living that lifestyle and not doing anything that even remotely puts them in danger, to the point to where, like, the slightest bit of what would you call it, the slightest bit of conflict makes them absolutely panic and freak out and have no idea what to do with anything that's going on. They just completely lose their minds. And people who are living in extreme safety like that are an anomaly whenever it comes to the world that we live in. They will spend their life in safety and nothing bad will happen to them, and so they will just assume that the world is different than what it is that it used to be, and people are safe now, and you don't need a means to be able to protect yourself, and so as a result, nobody needs a means to be able to protect himself. Well, here in the United States, I know that the past, since 2020, we have seen a whole lot of things go down that have been extremely large indicators that we desperately need a means to be able to protect ourselves. For example, let's look at all the panicking and whatnot that happened between different viral infections, with lack of better terminology so YouTube does not, completely destroy the algorithm of this video. The viral infections that were going around for a while there in 2020. There were a lot of people freaking out, and a lot of people were thinking it was the end, and there were a lot of people panic buying a lot of things, and a lot of people arming up. And then after that, we had some riots and some city burnings, and that lasted for a long time, and there were a lot of people who were thinking to themselves, I don't need a means to be able to protect myself, I'll just call the police. And then the police said, we're not coming to help you, good luck, you're on your own. And then these people are just like, oh my God, what? You're telling me I'm not going to be able to call the police and have them help me, and I'm out here completely defenseless? So, yeah, there's a lot of situations with that where people were just completely caught off guard, and they got a really rude awakening that they were their own first responders. There are people out there who still, even to this day, despite everything that had happened, will say that more often than not, situations can be resolved within 5 or 6 shots from, say, a 1911 or, say, a revolver. And yet, in the United States, in multiple states, in multiple cities in said states, we had massive, massive mobs and crowds of people go around, way more than that 5 or 6 mark, and many, many of them were armed. If those guys decided that you were a target, guess what? Your 5 or 6 shots was not going to be enough for that, or your I'll just call the police mindset was not going to be enough for that. Just your mindset of, well, I'm kind of preaching the choir on this one. I guess I don't have to get into that. a bunch of people were in very bad situations because of the rioting and looting and city burning and people just being so outlandishly upset and seeing an excuse to be able to do harm and get away with it, because a lot of these people who were doing these things not only were completely scot-free whenever it comes to consequences, but they were encouraged by media to continue to do so. Combine that with the defund the police efforts that was going on for a significant amount of time, and we are met with some big issues. So if you are someone who was not caught in the literal citywide burnings and rioting and just massive crowds of people targeting individuals, then congratulations. You got really lucky with where it is that you're at, and odds are where it is that you're at allows people to be able to protect themselves. If not, then you're probably not in a big city or something like that. Now, all that being said, let's go ahead and pick it up a little bit. The United States is one of the safest countries in the world, and the civilian population has deemed it so safe that we don't need to be able to defend ourselves, or at least a good amount of the civilian population, because they listen to the mass media. Well, the people who decide that we don't need to defend ourselves are completely clueless and ignorant of the fact that, like, literally a majority of the world hates our guts, and we have open borders, and we have on numerous occasions found known terrorists skimping through the borders coming into the United States. Who knows how many terrorists or how many sleeper cells or how many people looking to do harm to the civilian population managed to make it into the United States because of these open borders. It's way too easy. It's way too easy for the border situation, but that's an argument for a different topic. But whenever it comes to the border situation, I'm less concerned with the actual border situation, more concerned with the results. Because who knows how many sleeper cells and terrorists and whatnot we currently have inside of the United States right now. People who are loyal to other countries and other factions and other religions and whatnot, who want to do harm to the civilian population here in the U.S. And I'm willing to bet that they're probably going to end up targeting U.S. Civilian sectors that do not have access to firearms, because that would be the easiest way to do a whole lot of damage. So the people who think that you don't need a means to defend yourself are completely ignoring the fact that we literally have the enemy here in the United States because of these open border policies and them just being able to sneak themselves in. Even without the open border policies, all it takes is, a bunch of dudes on a raft coming up onto a shore that nobody's paying attention to. Or let's step it up a little bit. We see a bunch of different conflicts going on around the world. We see Israel over there dealing with Gaza, and that's a messing a topic for itself. I'm not going to talk about sides and who's right and who's wrong. I'll let you guys discuss that in the comments below. Then we also see Russia dealing with Ukraine, and we see a lot of protests and loyalists between a bunch of different sides here in the U.S. On top of that, I'm willing to bet that there's a bunch of these loyalists here in the U.S. who are willing to do harm to the United States citizenry as a result of what is going on over there, and the United States deciding to pick certain sides whenever it comes to the situations overseas. Now, those people, those sleeper cells that are currently in the U.S., could be set off at any point in time. All it takes is for whoever or whatever to happen for them to say, all right, snap your fingers, guess what? It's go time. We're going to go ahead and make our point known. And then you got yourself a really bad situation, especially because, like I said, they're likely going to end up targeting civilians that do not have a means to be able to defend themselves, because they've spent their whole lives in just this shell where they don't look up and look at what's going on in the world. Literally, over half the world hates the United States with an absolute seething, rooting passion, to the point to where they would happily send people over to take the United States out. think a lot of reason why they don't do that is because, much like what was said in World War II, there would be a rifle behind every single blade of grass. There's a tremendous amount of firearms that are owned by the civilian population here inside the United States. The United States civilian population is, without a doubt, by a huge margin, the most armed and most capable and most massive military set of people. That we're the largest standing army. With lack of better terminology, before I start going on to some other rant, which I was starting to go on to there, we are the world's largest army by and large. Granted, we don't have a whole lot of organization, and our technology and funding capabilities is significantly less than that of the actual United States Army. We have seen time and time again that technology is not the breaking point. It ultimately develops into dudes fighting in tunnels. We have seen that time and time again with various conflicts all across the world. So, I just want to give my 2 cents. If you end up talking with somebody who ends up being like, hey, you don't need guns, we shouldn't have guns, get rid of them, go ahead and bring up these topics, because there are a lot of reasons, especially right now, nowadays, why we need guns. The civilian population needs guns. The United States has stopped exporting firearms out to, insert your choice of country here. They've stopped exporting firearms for probably just because they're looking to be able to use those firearms for whatever purpose it is that they deem they need to be used for. And they've also stopped selling They've also stopped selling the U.S. population surplus ammunition. So there's some serious issues on the horizon that really leaves us saying, all right, this might turn into something. And all I'm saying is you should be ready, and you should be armed, and you should be prepared for what might potentially come over that grapevine. Now, I'm not 100% sure about the lack of selling ammunition on the civilian market. I've heard things saying yes, I've heard things saying no. But from what I have seen and what I have read, I think the answer is yes, and that I'll let you guys go look up that story. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I will see you guys on the next episode.
Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.